The dirt road leading to the Riley family home stretched for nearly 2 miles from the main highway, cutting through dense Virginia woods that had grown more imposing with each passing year. Emma Riley gripped the steering wheel of her rental car, her knuckles whitening as she navigated the familiar yet somehow foreign path. 10 years had passed since she'd last driven down this road, fleeing in the middle of the night with nothing but a backpack and $300 saved from waitressing jobs her father never knew about. "You okay?" her sister Lily asked from the passenger seat, her voice barely audible over the sound of gravel crunching beneath the tires. Emma nodded, not trusting her voice. The lawyer's call 3 days ago had been unexpected. Their father, Reverend Joseph Riley, was dead. Heart attack at 62. The same man who had told his daughters that women were vessels meant for obedience, that their purpose was to serve, that rebellion meant eternal damnation. "I never thought we'd come back here," Lily whispered, her fingers nervously twisting the hem of her blouse. Unlike Emma, who had escaped at 18, Lily had endured their father's strict religious household until she was 21, when she too finally gathered the courage to leave. As the house came into view, a sprawling 2-story colonial that had once been white but now wore a grimy gray patina, Emma felt her chest tighten. The place looked smaller somehow, diminished. The flower beds their mother had lovingly tended before her death 15 years ago were now choked with weeds. "There's someone here," Emma said, nodding toward an old blue pickup truck parked near the front porch. "Probably Pastor Green," Lily replied. The lawyer mentioned he'd been helping with Dad's affairs toward the end. Emma parked beside the truck, killing the engine but making no move to exit the car. "Why do you think he left it to us?" "The house? Everything, after all this time." Lily shrugged. "Maybe it was guilt. Maybe he had a change of heart. Or maybe, double quotes, maybe it was just his final way of dragging us back," Emma finished. They sat in silence for a moment before Emma finally opened her door. The humid August air immediately clung to her skin as she stepped out, her eyes drawn to the second-floor window of what had once been her bedroom. For a split second, she thought she saw movement behind the curtain, a shadow passing, but when she blinked, there was nothing. Pastor Green met them at the door, a heavy-set man with thinning gray hair who had aged considerably since Emma last saw him. He had been her father's closest ally, the associate pastor who had stood by nodding in solemn agreement during her father's most fire and brimstone sermons. "Emma, Lily," he greeted them with a tight smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Your father would be. Well, I suppose he'd be surprised you both came." "We're here for the house, not for him," Emma replied coolly. The pastor's lips thinned. "Yes, well, I've been keeping an eye on things. Your father left instructions." "We've already spoken with the lawyer," Lily interjected. "The property's ours now. We'll handle things from here." Pastor Green hesitated, his hand still resting on the doorknob. "There are things you girls don't understand about this place. About your father's work. His work." Emma couldn't keep the bitter edge from her voice. "You mean terrorizing his daughters with threats of hellfire for the sin of wanting to go to college? Or maybe you mean the exorcisms he performed on teenage girls who dared to question his authority?" The pastor's face flushed. "Your father was a complicated man, but everything he did was out of love and devotion. We'll take it from here, Pastor," Lily said firmly. With obvious reluctance, he handed over a set of keys. "I've left some of your father's papers on his desk. Things he wanted you to see." He paused at the bottom of the porch steps. "He changed in his final years, you know, after what happened to those girls from the congregation. It broke something in him." Emma frowned. "What girls? What are you talking about?" But Pastor Green was already walking toward his truck. "Lock the doors at night," he called over his shoulder. "Some folks around here still believe this house is watched." As the truck disappeared down the driveway, Emma and Lily exchanged uneasy glances. "What did he mean by that?" Lily asked. Emma shook her head. "I don't know, but I have a feeling we're about to find out." The door creaked open, revealing the dark interior of their childhood home, a place that had once been their prison, now inexplicably theirs to claim. The inside of the house smelled of dust, old books, and something else, a faint medicinal odor that hung in the air. Emma flipped the light switch and a dim, yellow glow illuminated the entryway. The familiar family portrait still hung on the wall, their father standing stern and tall, their mother seated with a vacant smile. And Emma and Lily as children, their hands clasped tightly together, identical forced smiles on their faces. "He kept everything the same," Lily murmured, running her finger along a side table, leaving a trail in the dust. "It's like a museum to the past." They moved through the house room by room, opening curtains and windows to let in fresh air. The living room with its worn leather Bible on the coffee table. The dining room where they'd sat through countless lectures on feminine virtue and submission. The kitchen where their mother had quietly prepared meals while their father quoted scripture about women's duties. "I want to check his study," Emma said finally. Pastor Green mentioned something about papers. Their father's study had always been off-limits when they were growing up, a masculine sanctuary where he prepared his sermons and conducted church business. Emma hesitated at the heavy oak door before turning the knob. The room was exactly as she remembered, dark wood paneling, shelves lined with theological texts, and a massive desk dominating the space. But now papers were scattered across the surface, along with several leather-bound journals that Emma recognized as her father's personal diaries. "Look at this," Lily said, picking up a newspaper clipping from the desk. It was dated 3 years earlier, the headline reading, "Local church mourns loss of young members in tragic accident." Emma took the clipping and scanned it quickly. 3 girls from Dad's congregation died when their car went off Blackwater Bridge. Sarah Jensen, Rebecca Turner, and Meg Winters. The names were vaguely familiar, children of church members who would have been much younger than Emma and Lily. "There's more," Lily said, rifling through the papers. Police reports, letters from parents. Dad was collecting information about the accident. Emma picked up one of the journals, opening to a page marked with a ribbon. Her father's handwriting, once bold and confident, had grown shaky. "May 17th, 2022, I can no longer deny what is happening. The signs are too numerous." The girls began asking questions after finding the book in the basement. They came to me for answers I could not give. Now they are gone, and I fear it has begun again. The scratching in the walls grows louder each night. "What book is he talking about?" Lily asked, reading over Emma's shoulder. Emma flipped through more pages, finding increasingly disturbing entries. "June 3rd, 2022. I have sealed the basement door. What was brought into this house must remain contained. I was wrong to continue my father's work. Wrong to believe we could control it. September 12th, 2022. Emma and Lily must never return here. I have ensured the property will pass to them, but I pray they sell it without setting foot inside. Some sins cannot be undone." Emma closed the journal, her hand trembling slightly. "There's something in the basement he was afraid of." Lily was already moving toward the kitchen, where the basement door was located. "Then that's where we need to look." The door to the basement was unlike any other in the house. Heavy oak reinforced with iron bands, a deadbolt lock securing it shut. A crucifix had been nailed to the wood, and what looked like Latin phrases were written around the doorframe in faded ink. "This is new," Emma said, running her fingers over the strange markings. "The basement wasn't like this when we lived here. It was just an ordinary door." It took some effort to turn the key in the rusty lock, and the door opened with a groan of protest. The smell that wafted up was dank and earthy, tinged with something acrid like spoiled chemicals. Emma flicked the light switch, and a single bulb illuminated a set of wooden stairs descending into shadows. "I'll go first," she said, taking a hesitant step down. The stair creaked beneath her weight. As they descended, the temperature dropped noticeably. The basement had been renovated since they'd left, the once open space now divided by partition walls, creating a labyrinth of small rooms. The concrete floor had been torn up in places, exposing dark soil beneath. "What was Dad doing down here?" Lily whispered. In the center of the main room stood a large wooden table, its surface stained dark in places. Surrounding it were bookshelves filled with volumes much older than the theological texts upstairs. Books, with worn leather bindings and no titles on their spines. Emma approached the table, noticing a thin layer of ash covering its surface. Next to it was a metal wastebasket filled with partially burned papers. She carefully picked up a fragment, reading the visible text. "The ritual must be completed before midnight on the 3rd day. When the barrier between worlds is thinnest, double quotes." A sudden noise from upstairs, the distinct creak of floorboards under weight, made both women freeze. "Did you hear that?" Lily whispered. Emma nodded, her heart racing. "Someone's in the house." The single light bulb flickered once, twice, then went out, plunging them into darkness. In the pitch blackness of the basement, Emma fumbled for her phone, activating its flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, casting long shadows across the walls. "We need to get upstairs," she whispered to Lily, who nodded, her face pale in the harsh light. They moved quickly toward the stairs, Emma leading the way. The creaking above had stopped, but the silence was somehow more unnerving. As they reached the bottom of the staircase, Emma's light caught something carved into the wooden riser of the first step, a symbol that looked like an eye inside a triangle, with unfamiliar script flowing around it. "Don't touch it," Lily warned when Emma reached out. "Let's just go." They climbed the stairs as quietly as possible, Emma's flashlight beam bouncing with each step. At the top, she slowly turned the doorknob and eased the door open, peering into the kitchen. It was empty, but a cabinet door that had been closed earlier now stood open. Emma stepped into the kitchen, Lily closed behind her. The house was silent except for the faint ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. Hello? Emma called out, her voice sounding unnaturally loud in the stillness. No response. They moved cautiously through the house, checking each room on the first floor. Nothing seemed disturbed. But Emma couldn't shake the feeling that something was different, as if items had been shifted slightly from where they'd been before. Maybe it was just the house settling, Lily suggested, though her tight expression betrayed her unease. Back in their father's study, Emma returned to the journals, flipping through the most recent entries, while Lily examined the newspaper clippings more thoroughly. Listen to this, Lily said. According to the police report, the 3 girls were found with identical marks on their wrists, small triangular burns. The police thought it might be some kind of religious symbol or cult activity. Emma found an entry in the journal dated shortly after the accident. March 4th, 2022, they found my father's book. Sarah asked me about the names listed inside, about the rituals. I told them it was just historical research, nothing more. But they didn't believe me. They started performing the rituals themselves, thinking it was some kind of game. Children playing with forces they cannot understand, just as I did when I was young. There's something else here, Emma said, pulling out a folded paper tucked into the back of the journal. It was a hand-drawn map of the house with notes scribbled in the margins. In the basement, her father had marked an area with the words "Original Foundation, Do Not Disturb." We need to go back down there, Emma said. Lily looked horrified. Are you crazy, after what we just read? Don't you want to know what Dad was hiding? What made him so afraid that he tried to keep us away from this place even after his death? Before Lily could respond, a loud thump came from upstairs, followed by what sounded like something heavy being dragged across the floor. That's definitely not the house settling, Emma whispered. They crept to the bottom of the staircase, listening. The sound had stopped. Emma put her foot on the first step, wincing as it creaked beneath her weight. Emma, don't, Lily pleaded. We need to know if someone's up there, Emma insisted, continuing her ascent. The upstairs hallway was dark, the late afternoon sun no longer reaching through the windows. Emma used her phone's flashlight again, illuminating the familiar corridor with 4 closed doors. Their bedrooms, their parents' room, and the bathroom. Emma tried her old bedroom door first, finding it locked. Her parents' room was next. The door swung open to reveal the room exactly as she remembered, the large 4-poster bed made with hospital corners. Her mother's silver hairbrush still on the dresser, as if waiting for its owner's return. The bathroom was empty as well, the ancient clawfoot tub dry and clean. That left Lily's old room. As Emma approached, she noticed something dark seeping out from beneath the door, a liquid slowly spreading across the wooden floorboards. Her heart hammered in her chest as she reached for the doorknob, finding it ice cold to the touch. The door swung open without resistance. Lily's childhood bedroom had been transformed. The twin bed and dresser were gone, replaced by a crude altar made of stacked stones. The walls were covered with the same symbols they had seen in the basement, painted in what looked disturbingly like dried blood. On the altar lay a large, ancient-looking book, its pages open. And on the ceiling above, something dark was spreading, a stain that seemed to pulse and grow as Emma watched, dripping the dark liquid that was pooling on the floor. Emma, Lily called from downstairs, did you find anything? Emma couldn't speak, couldn't move. As the stain on the ceiling began to take shape, forming what looked like a face, its mouth opening in a silent scream. Emma? Lily's voice came again, closer now. She was climbing the stairs. Emma backed out of the room, pulling the door shut just as her sister reached the top of the staircase. What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost, Lily said, then noticed the dark liquid seeping under the door. What is that? We need to leave, Emma said, grabbing Lily's arm. Now. But Lily pulled away, her expression hardening. No, I'm tired of running from this house, from what happened here. I want answers. Before Emma could stop her, Lily pushed past and opened the door to her old bedroom. Emma braced herself for her sister's reaction to the horrific altar, the symbols, the face forming on the ceiling. But Lily just stood in the doorway, looking confused. It's exactly the same, she said. Emma peered over her shoulder, not believing what she was seeing. The room was unchanged from their childhood, the faded floral wallpaper, the small desk where Lily used to write in her journal, the twin bed with its patchwork quilt. There was no altar, no symbols, no stain on the ceiling, and no liquid on the floor. But I just saw ... double quotes, Emma trailed off, rubbing her eyes. There was something here. Lily gave her a concerned look. Maybe we're both more affected by being back than we realized. This house has a way of getting into your head. They returned downstairs, Emma still shaken by what she had, or thought she had, seen. In the study, they continued examining their father's papers. finding more newspaper clippings about the three girls who had died, along with handwritten notes their father had made about their families. All three girls were descendants of the founding families of the church, Lily noted. Just like us. Emma picked up another journal, this one older than the others, the leather cracked with age. Opening it, she realized it wasn't their father's handwriting, but someone else's, more formal, the letters precisely formed. "I think this belonged to our grandfather," she said, scanning the pages. "Listen to this. October 17th, 1952. The congregation has grown to 30 families. The old ways are being forgotten as newcomers join us, which is for the best. What was buried beneath the original church must remain undisturbed. I've taken the book of names to my home for safekeeping, away from curious eyes." Emma flipped through more pages, stopping at an entry that made her blood run cold. June 3rd, 1953. Joseph found the book today. At only 10 years old, he is too young to understand its power, yet he managed to speak one of the names aloud. "I administered the cleansing ritual, but fear some residue of contact may remain. I must watch him carefully in the years to come." "Joseph was Dad," Lily said unnecessarily. "What is this book of names they keep mentioning?" As if in answer, a loud crash came from upstairs, the unmistakable sound of breaking glass. Both women jumped. "That definitely wasn't the house settling," Emma said. This time they went upstairs together, moving cautiously down the hallway. The sound had come from their parents' bedroom. The door, which Emma had left open earlier, was now closed. Emma pushed it open slowly, revealing the room in disarray. The mirror above the dresser had shattered, glass shards scattered across the floor. The mattress had been partially pulled from the bed, and the wallpaper behind the headboard had been torn away, revealing the plaster wall beneath. And there, scratched into the plaster in jagged, desperate strokes, was a message. "They come when called." "Dad did this?" Lily whispered. Emma shook her head. "The plaster looks fresh. This was done recently." They backed out of the room, suddenly aware of every creak and groan of the old house around them. It was getting dark outside, shadows lengthening across the floors. "We should go into town, find a hotel for the night," Emma suggested. "Come back in the daylight." Lily nodded, her earlier bravado gone. They hurried downstairs, gathering their bags from where they'd left them in the entryway. Emma reached for the front door, then froze. Scratched into the wood of the door, just at eye level, were the same words they'd seen upstairs. "They come when called." "It wasn't there before," Lily said, her voice barely audible. Emma tried the doorknob, but it wouldn't turn. "It's locked." "How is it locked?" "We didn't lock it." They tried the back door in the kitchen with the same result. Every window they attempted to open seemed sealed shut, as if painted closed over decades. As night fell completely, the electricity flickered and died, plunging the house into darkness. "The basement," Emma said suddenly. Dad's map showed another exit through the original foundation, using their phone flashlights. They made their way to the basement door, which now stood ominously open, a draft of cold air flowing up from below. The basement seemed different in the beam of their flashlights, larger somehow, the partition walls casting confusing shadows that made the space feel like a maze. The air was noticeably colder than before, their breath forming small clouds in front of their faces. "This doesn't make sense," Lily whispered. "It's August in Virginia. Why is it so cold down here?" Emma consulted the map from their father's journal, orienting herself. "According to this, the original foundation is through there," she said, pointing to a narrow passage between two bookshelves. "That's where the exit should be." They squeezed through the opening, finding themselves in a small chamber they hadn't noticed during their first exploration. The floor here was dirt rather than concrete, and the walls were rough stone, much older than the rest of the basement. In the center of the room was a perfect circle of stones, each carved with symbols similar to those Emma had seen in the vision of Lily's room. And in the center of the circle lay a book, ancient, bound in what looked like dark leather, its pages yellowed with age. "The Book of Names," Emma breathed. Lily grabbed her arm. "Don't touch it. After everything we've read, everything that's happened, that thing is dangerous." Emma nodded, examining the circle without stepping into it. Her flashlight beam traced the edge of the stone ring, revealing more symbols carved into the dirt floor around it. "It's some kind of containment," she said. "Like the reinforced door upstairs, the Latin phrases. Dad was trying to keep something trapped." A soft scratching sound came from inside the walls, like fingernails dragging slowly across wood. "Where's the exit?" Lily asked urgently, her flashlight beam darting around the room. Emma consulted the map again. "It should be right here," she said, moving toward the far wall. But where the map indicated a door should be, there was only solid stone. "That's impossible," Emma muttered, running her hands over the cold surface. "It has to be here." The scratching in the walls grew louder, now coming from multiple directions at once. Dust began to filter down from the ceiling as the house seemed to shudder around them. We need to get back upstairs, Lily said, pulling Emma toward the passage. But as they turned, they saw that the narrow opening through which they'd entered was now sealed. The bookshelves had somehow moved together, blocking their escape. "This isn't happening," Lily whispered, her voice cracking with panic. "This isn't real." The scratching intensified, and now they could hear something else. Whispers. Too faint to make out words, but unmistakably human voices speaking in urgent, hurried tones. Emma's flashlight flickered, the beam weakening. "Battery's dying," she said. As if triggered by her words, Lily's flashlight went out completely, leaving them with only Emma's failing light. In the dimness, the Book of Names seemed to glow with a faint luminescence of its own. "Maybe there's something in there that can help us," Emma said, nodding toward the book. "Or maybe that's exactly what it wants," Lily countered. "For us to open it, to read from it." The whispering grew louder, and now they could make out fragments. "The sisters return. Bloodline continues. ... Speak the names. ... Emma's flashlight gave one last valiant effort before dying, plunging them into total darkness. In the pitch black, the book's glow intensified, its pages seeming to turn on their own. "We have to do something," Emma said, feeling her way forward carefully to avoid stepping into the stone circle. Her foot struck something soft on the floor, something that hadn't been there before. Kneeling down, she tentatively reached out, her fingers closing around what felt like fabric. A moment later, Lily's phone lit up the space again, and Emma found herself holding a worn leather satchel. Inside were candles, matches, a small silver knife, and a yellowed envelope addressed in their father's handwriting. "To my daughters, should they ever return." With shaking hands, Emma opened the letter and read aloud, "Emma and Lily, if you are reading this, then I have failed in my efforts to keep you from this house. I had hoped the property would be sold without your ever setting foot inside again, but I should have known my stubborn girls would want answers. What I am about to confess has haunted 3 generations of our family. My father discovered an ancient text beneath the original church, what we now call the Book of Names. It contains rituals for summoning entities from beyond our world, entities that once worshipped as gods. My father removed the book to protect the congregation, but his curiosity led him to experiment with its power. As a child, I accidentally performed one of the rituals, establishing a connection that has never been fully severed. When I founded my own church, I believed I could use this power for good, to strengthen faith through fear, to demonstrate the reality of spiritual forces. I was wrong. The 3 girls who died, Sarah, Rebecca, and Meg, found the book just as I had as a child. They performed the ritual but were unprepared for what answered, so I tried to help them to close what they had opened, but I was too late. The entities cannot fully enter our world without invitation, without names being spoken, and blood being offered. But they can influence, can whisper, can create visions designed to terrify and manipulate. There's only one way to end this, to seal the breach permanently. The ritual must be reversed by those of the same bloodline who unwittingly continued the connection. My bloodline. You, my daughters. I have prepared everything you need. The candles must be placed at the cardinal points around the circle. The words on the back of this letter must be spoken exactly as written. And then ... Emma turned the page, but the rest had been torn away. "And then what?" Lily demanded. "What do we do?" The house gave another shudder, more violent this time. Dust and small pieces of debris rained down from above. The whispers had grown to a constant stream, and now they could hear footsteps moving across the floor above them. "We have to try," Emma said, taking out the candles. "Help me place these." As they worked, the temperature dropped even further. Their breath now formed thick clouds, and frost began to form on the stone walls around them. "Ready?" Emma asked, holding the back page of the letter, which was covered in strange, angular script. Lily nodded, taking her place opposite Emma around the circle of stones. Together they began to read the words their father had left them, sounds that weren't quite language, that seemed to scrape against their throats as they spoke them. As they read, the candles flickered blue, then green, casting eerie shadows that moved independently of the flames. The book in the center of the circle began to rise, hovering inches above the dirt floor, its pages flipping rapidly. And then they reached the end of the text, the final symbol reverberating in the chamber like a struck bell. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the book slammed shut with enough force to extinguish the candles, plunging them back into darkness. In the silence that followed, a new sound emerged, soft at first, then growing. The sound of a woman crying. "Mom," Lily whispered into the darkness, her voice small and uncertain. The crying continued, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. It was a sound of profound grief, of loss so deep it transcended words. And yes, Emma realized with a chill, it was unmistakably their mother's voice. A soft blue glow began to emanate from the stones of the circle, providing just enough light to see by. The book of names had returned to its place on the ground, closed and still. But the air around them had changed, becoming thick and heavy, difficult to breathe. It didn't work, Emma said. Whatever Dad wanted us to do, we didn't finish it. The crying grew louder, closer, and with it came a drop in temperature so severe that frost began to form on their eyelashes and hair. The blue light pulsed in rhythm with the sobs. "Mom?" Emma called this time. "Is that you?" The crying stopped abruptly. In the silence that followed, they heard a single word, spoken in their mother's voice but distorted, as if coming through water. "Run." The walls began to shake violently, dirt raining down from above. A crack appeared in the ceiling, zigzagging across the stone. "We have to get out of here," Lily shouted over the rumbling. Emma grabbed the satchel and the book of names, ignoring Lily's protest. "We might need these." The bookshelves that had blocked their exits suddenly toppled forward, crashing to the ground and revealing the passage back to the main basement. They scrambled through, climbing over fallen books and splintered wood. The stairs to the main floor were still intact, and they raced up them, bursting into the kitchen just as a massive crash came from the basement behind them, the sound of the ceiling collapsing. But the horror wasn't over. The kitchen was transformed, the modern appliances gone, replaced by an old wood-burning stove and a pump sink. The walls were a different color, the window above the sink smaller and divided into panes. "What's happening?" Lily gasped. "The house is showing us the past," Emma realized. "This is how it looked decades ago." They moved cautiously into the hallway, which had also changed, the wallpaper now a faded floral pattern, the floorboards bare of carpet. From upstairs came the sound of their mother's crying again, interspersed now with a man's voice, low, threatening, speaking words they couldn't quite make out. "That's not Dad," Lily said. "The voice is different." They climbed the staircase slowly, following the sounds to their parents' bedroom. The door was ajar, flickering candlelight visible through the crack. Emma pushed it open. The scene before them was like looking through a window to the past. A younger version of their mother knelt on the floor, her nightgown stained with blood, her face bruised. Standing over her was an older man they recognized from photographs as their grandfather, Reverend Thomas Riley. "You will obey," he was saying, his voice eerily calm despite the violence of the scene. "The bloodline must continue. The pact must be honored. I won't bring children into this," their mother sobbed. "Not to be sacrifices to your gods." Thomas Riley raised a hand as if to strike her again, but suddenly froze, his eyes fixing directly on Emma and Lily standing in the doorway. "The daughters return," he said, his voice changing, deepening to an inhuman register. "The circle completes." Their mother turned, her eyes widening as she saw them. "My babies," she whispered. "I tried to protect you. I tried to end it." The vision began to flicker like a failing film projector, the figures of their mother and grandfather fading in and out. "Mom!" Emma called out. "What do we need to do? How do we end this?" Their mother's mouth moved, but the sound was fading. Only fragments reached them. ... 3 generations. Blood sacrifice. Cut the line ... The vision dissolved completely, leaving them standing in the empty bedroom as it existed in the present day. "Did she kill herself?" Lily asked quietly. "Is that what Dad told us was a car accident?" Emma felt a cold certainty settle in her chest. She was trying to break the cycle, to protect us from whatever our grandfather started. A new sound began to build, a low humming that vibrated through the floorboards. The temperature, which had briefly normalized, plummeted again. "We need to finish what Dad started," Emma said, holding up the satchel and book. The ritual in the basement wasn't complete. There was more to it. The rest of the letter, Lily realized. "We need to find it." They searched the room frantically, checking drawers, looking under the mattress, scanning the walls for hidden compartments. The humming grew louder, the vibrations strong enough now to make small objects dance across surfaces. The floorboards. Lily suddenly exclaimed, dropping to her knees beside the bed. "There's a loose one here." She pried up a warped board, revealing a small space beneath. Inside was a tin box, rusted with age. Emma took it with trembling hands and opened the lid. Inside was the torn second page of their father's letter, along with a small glass vial containing what looked disturbingly like dried blood, and an old photograph of 4 young women standing in front of the house. "That's Mom," Lily said, pointing to one of the figures. "But who are the others?" "Sarah, Rebecca, and Meg," Emma guessed, remembering the newspaper clippings. "Not our contemporaries. They were named after these women. Our mother's friends, maybe?" Emma unfolded the torn page and continued reading their father's instructions. and then the bloodline that opened the door must close it. A sacrifice is required, not of life, but of connection. The blood of the summoner must be spilled upon the book, and these words spoken. What was invited is now banished, what was opened is now sealed. The covenant is broken, the bloodline severed. I tried to complete this ritual myself, but I was prevented. The entities recognized my intention and fought back. They have grown stronger over the decades, feeding on fear and suffering. They do not want to return to their prison. My father believed he was creating a dynasty of power, a church built on real spiritual forces that would ensure our family's influence for generations. By the time I understood what he had truly done, it was too late. Your mother discovered the truth shortly before her death. Her accident was no accident at all. I've kept you away all these years to protect you, to prevent the entities from establishing a connection to the third generation. But I fear in my absence, they will call you back to complete what was started. Forgive me, my daughters. I was a prideful, foolish man who continued my father's evil out of ambition and arrogance. If you are reading this, know that I loved you in my broken way. Now you must be stronger than I ever was. The ritual must be completed before the third night after your return to the house. After that, the barrier will be too weak to be repaired. May God have mercy on us all. Your father, Emma, looked up from the letter to find Lily staring at her, face pale. Tonight is the third night, Lily said quietly. We arrived the day before yesterday. The humming had become a roar, the entire house shaking as if in the grip of an earthquake. Plaster cracked and fell from the ceiling. A picture frame crashed to the floor, glass shattering. We have to go back to the basement, Emma said, tucking the letter and vial into her pocket. Back to the circle. If it's still there, Lily pointed out. We heard it collapse. They made their way downstairs, holding onto walls and railings as the house convulsed around them. The kitchen floor had split down the middle, a yawning crack revealing dirt below. The basement door had been torn from its hinges. Peering down the staircase, they could see that while part of the ceiling had indeed collapsed, the stairs themselves were intact. And beyond the debris, a blue glow pulsed. The stone circle was still there. Together? Emma asked, holding out her hand. Lily nodded, gripping her sister's fingers tightly. Together, they descended into the darkness, toward whatever end awaited them in the house of their ancestors. The basement was in ruins. Half the ceiling had collapsed, bringing with it bookshelves, furniture, and chunks of the floor above. But the stone circle remained untouched, the blue light emanating from it casting ghastly shadows across the destruction. The book of names lay where Emma had dropped it, open once more, its pages turning slowly as if stirred by an unfelt breeze. The air was thick with dust and the smell of damp earth, making it difficult to breathe. The ritual, Emma said, pulling out the vial of blood from her pocket. Dad prepared everything we need. Lily eyed the vial dubiously. Is that ... his blood? I think so. He said the blood of the summoner must be spilled on the book. They approached the circle cautiously. The whispering had returned, more insistent now, a chorus of voices speaking over each other in languages neither of them recognized. Wait, Lily said, putting a hand on Emma's arm. Dad's blood won't work. He said it himself. He tried the ritual and was prevented. The entities recognized his intention. Emma paused, the vial halfway to the book. Then, whose blood? Ours, Lily said simply. We're the third generation. The bloodline continues through us. Emma stared at her sister, the implications sinking in. But that means ... double quotes, we have to choose to end it, Lily finished. To break the covenant, sever the bloodline. No children, no continuation of what grandfather started. The house gave another violent shudder, and more debris rained down around them. The blue light pulsed brighter, and the whispers grew to a fever pitch. They know what we're planning, Emma said. They're trying to stop us. From the shadows beyond the circle, shapes began to emerge. Humanoid, but wrong somehow. Their proportions distorted, their movements jerky and unnatural. They kept to the darkness, just beyond the reach of the blue light, but their presence was unmistakable. We need to hurry, Lily urged, taking the silver knife from the satchel. Without hesitation, she drew the blade across her palm, wincing at the pain. Blood welled up, dark in the blue light. She held her hand out to Emma, who nodded and took the knife, making a similar cut across her own palm. The book, Emma said, stepping toward the circle. The shapes in the darkness surged forward, stopped only by the boundary of the blue light. They pressed against it like a membrane, distorting it, testing for weaknesses. Their forms clarified, human faces stretched and twisted into masks of pain, bodies elongated and bent at impossible angles. Among them, Emma recognized their grandfather, their father, and most heartbreakingly, their mother, her beautiful face contorted with an expression of agony and rage that their gentle mother would never have worn in life. Don't look at them, Lily said, her voice shaking. They're not real. They're trying to stop us. Together they stepped into the circle. The moment they crossed the boundary of stones, the blue light intensified, forming a dome around them. The shapes outside hissed and retreated slightly. Emma placed the open book on the ground between them. Ready? Lily nodded, extending her bleeding hand over the ancient pages. Emma did the same. Together they began to recite the words their father had written. What was invited is now banished. What was opened is now sealed. The covenant is broken, the bloodline severed. Their blood dripped onto the yellowed pages, spreading and merging, soaking into the ancient text. The book began to vibrate, the pages flipping rapidly as if caught in a high wind. The entities outside the circle let out a collective howl of rage and despair. They surged forward again, pressing against the blue barrier, which now began to flicker and weaken. The covenant is broken, Emma shouted over the cacophony. The bloodline severed. We ended here. Lily joined in, her voice gaining strength. No more sacrifices, no more fear. Their combined blood had now completely covered the open pages of the book, obscuring the text beneath. The vibration increased to a violent shudder, and then, with a sound like tearing fabric, the book split down its spine. A shockwave of energy exploded outward from the ruined book, slamming Emma and Lily to the ground. The blue light surged, expanding in a blinding flash that filled the entire basement. When they could see again, the shapes in the darkness were gone. The whispering had stopped. The only sound was their own ragged breathing and the settling of debris around them. The book of names lay in charred pieces between them, still smoking slightly. The stone circle had cracked in several places, the symbols carved into the stones now faded and illegible. Is it over? Lily asked, her voice hoarse. Before Emma could answer, the ground beneath them began to tremble again, not with the supernatural violence of before, but with the very real danger of structural collapse. The house is coming down, Emma realized. We need to get out, now. They scrambled to their feet, abandoning the ritual items as they raced for the stairs. The trembling increased, and chunks of the remaining ceiling began to fall. They dodged and weaved through the debris, reaching the staircase just as a support beam crashed down behind them. They burst into the kitchen to find the entire house groaning around them, windows shattering spontaneously, walls buckling inward. The front door, which had been locked by supernatural forces, now hung open, offering escape. Hand in hand they ran through the house one last time, past the portrait of their false family happiness, past the study where their father had documented his guilt, past all the memories of fear and control. As they emerged onto the front porch just as the roof began to cave in, the entire structure folding in on itself like a house of cards. From a safe distance on the lawn they watched as the Riley family home, 3 generations of secrets, abuse, and occult horrors, collapsed into a pile of splintered wood and broken stone. Dawn was breaking on the horizon, painting the sky in pinks and golds. For the first time since arriving, Emma felt she could breathe freely, the weight of family legacy finally lifting from her shoulders. Lily squeezed her hand, both their palms still bleeding slightly. It's really over, she said, not quite a question. Emma nodded, watching as dust rose from the ruins of their childhood prison. The bloodline ends with us. 2 days later, Emma stood at the edge of what had once been their family property, watching as county officials surveyed the collapsed house. Yellow caution tape stretched around the perimeter, fluttering in the light September breeze. They're calling it a sinkhole, Lily said, coming to stand beside her. Apparently this whole area is riddled with limestone caves. Perfect natural explanation. Emma nodded, absently touching the bandage on her palm. The cut was healing well, though she suspected it would leave a scar, a permanent reminder of what they had done, what they had ended. What did you tell them about why we weren't in the house when it collapsed? She asked. That we'd gone into town for dinner and came back to find it like this, Lily replied. They seemed to accept that. Apparently there have been other structural issues in the area recently. They watched in silence as workers carefully removed debris, documenting the scene for insurance purposes. I went to see Pastor Green this morning, Lily said after a while. He didn't seem surprised about what happened to the house. Emma glanced at her sister. What did he say? Not much. But he gave me this. Lily handed over a yellowed envelope. He said Dad left it with him as a kind of insurance in case anything happened to his papers in the house. Emma opened it carefully, finding a single sheet of paper inside, a letter dated just 3 months before their father's death. To whom it may concern, I, Joseph Riley, being of sound mind, do hereby confess to my involvement in the deaths of Sarah Jensen, Rebecca Turner, and Meg Winters on May 10, 2022. While I did not directly cause the accident that took their lives, I was aware of the danger they were in and failed to intervene appropriately. These young women had discovered documents in my possession related to certain religious practices my father had introduced to our church decades ago. In their innocence, they began experimenting with rituals they did not understand. When they came to me with questions, I minimized their concerns and insisted they return the materials they had found. On the night of their deaths, they contacted me in a state of extreme distress, claiming to be experiencing supernatural phenomena as a result of their activities. Instead of going to them immediately, I delayed, partly out of fear, partly out of denial that what my family had set in motion decades ago could still hold such power. By the time I arrived at Blackwater Bridge, it was too late. Her car had gone through the guardrail. Evidence at the scene suggested they had been trying to escape something that was pursuing them. I have lived with this guilt daily. I have attempted to make amends through anonymous donations to their families, but nothing can bring these young women back. I am providing this confession to ensure that should anything happen to me, some measure of truth will be known. May God forgive what I cannot forgive in myself. Reverend Joseph Riley. Emma folded the letter carefully, her hand trembling slightly. He was trying to make amends in his way. Too little, too late, Lily said, her voice hard. But at least he acknowledged what he did. They turned away from the ruins of the house, walking toward Emma's rental car parked on the dirt road. What do we do with this? Emma asked, holding up the letter. Lily considered for a moment. I think we should take it to the families of those girls. They deserve to know what happened to their daughters, even if we can't tell them the whole supernatural truth. Emma nodded. And after that, we go back to our lives. We move forward. Lily looked back at the collapsed house one last time. The Riley family legacy ends in those ruins. Whatever we do from now on is our choice, not dictated by some generational curse or covenant. As they drove away, Emma felt a weight lifting that she hadn't even realized she'd been carrying all these years. The weight of family secrets, of unanswered questions, of fear that somehow she would become like her father despite all her efforts to be different. The road ahead stretched out, leading away from Blackwater County, away from the past. In the rearview mirror, the ruins of the house grew smaller, eventually disappearing from view entirely. 1 week later, Emma sat in a coffee shop in downtown Richmond waiting for Lily to join her. They had spent the past days visiting the families of Sarah, Rebecca, and Meg, sharing their father's confession and offering what closure they could without revealing the supernatural aspects of the tragedy. The reactions had varied: anger, grief, bitter validation, but each family had ultimately expressed gratitude for finally knowing some version of the truth. The bell above the door jingled and Emma looked up expecting to see her sister. Instead, Pastor Green entered, his gaunt frame seeming even more diminished in the bright, modern setting of the cafe. He spotted her immediately and approached her table. Miss Riley, he greeted her formally. I hope you don't mind my intrusion. Your sister mentioned you would be here today. Emma gestured to the empty chair across from her. Please sit down. He lowered himself carefully, placing a worn leather portfolio on the table between them. I've been doing some thinking since the house collapsed. About my role in all of this, my complicity in your father's activities. Emma waited, saying nothing. I was your father's closest friend for 30 years, he continued. I knew there was something unusual about his methods, about the hold he had over his congregation, but I told myself it was just his natural charisma, his conviction. He paused, his fingers worrying the edge of the portfolio. I was wrong. What do you want, Pastor Green? Emma asked, keeping her voice neutral. He pushed the portfolio toward her. After your father's death, I found these hidden in his office at the church. I should have turned them over to you immediately, but I was afraid. Afraid of what they contained, afraid of my own culpability. Emma opened the portfolio to find a stack of photographs and handwritten notes. The top photo showed a much younger version of their father standing beside their grandfather in front of what appeared to be the original church building, a small, stone structure very different from the modern facility the congregation now used. Your grandfather founded the Church of Divine Revelation in 1948, Pastor Green explained. It began as a small offshoot of traditional Protestantism, but with certain unique elements that attracted a very devoted following. Emma flipped through more photos, congregation gatherings, baptisms, prayer meetings, but there were other images too, ones that made her stomach tighten. Ritual circles drawn in dirt, animal sacrifices, congregants with expressions of ecstatic fear on their faces. He called it tangible faith, Pastor Green continued. The idea that spiritual forces could be directly experienced, not just believed in. He taught that fear was the purest form of devotion, that to truly love God, one must first truly fear him. And my father continued these practices, Emma said. The pastor nodded, in a more moderated form, at least publicly. The extreme rituals were reserved for the inner circle, those who had proven their loyalty. Your mother was never part of that circle, despite Joseph's attempts to bring her in. She resisted, especially after you girls were born. Emma came to a photo that made her breath catch, her mother much younger, standing protectively in front of two small children that could only be Emma and Lily. Her expression was one of fierce determination. As she faced off against their father and grandfather, she tried to take us away, Emma realized, long before we left on our own. Many times, Pastor Green confirmed, but your grandfather had connections throughout the county, police, judges, social workers. Each time she tried, she was brought back. Eventually, she stopped trying, at least until the end. Emma looked up sharply. What do you mean? The pastor's eyes were sad, heavy with old guilt. Your mother didn't die in a car accident, Emma. I think you've figured that out by now. She took her own life, but not out of depression or despair, as your father told the congregation. She did it as a ritual of her own, a counter to what your grandfather had started. He reached into the portfolio and withdrew a sealed envelope, yellowed with age. She left this with me the day before she died, made me promise to give it to you girls when you were old enough to understand. Your father found out and convinced me it would only cause you unnecessary pain. Emma took the envelope, her hand trembling slightly. Her mother's handwriting adorned the front. For my daughters, when they are ready for the truth. I've lived with that betrayal for 15 years, Pastor Green said quietly. Watched as Joseph controlled your lives, used your mother's death as another tool to keep you obedient and afraid. I did nothing, said nothing. He stood, suddenly looking every one of his 70-plus years. I don't expect your forgiveness, Ms. Riley, but I hope that letter might bring you and your sister some measure of peace. As he turned to leave, Emma found her voice. Pastor, thank you for finally telling the truth. He paused, not quite looking back. The church is being dissolved, the building sold. Whatever your grandfather and father started, it ends now. After he left, Emma sat holding her mother's letter, waiting for Lily to arrive. Outside, rain began to fall, gentle at first, then building to a steady downpour that washed the world clean. Lily arrived at the coffee shop drenched from the sudden downpour, droplets of water clinging to her dark hair like tiny crystals. She spotted Emma immediately, her expression shifting from irritation at the weather to concern, as she saw what lay on the table between them. What's all this? She asked, sliding into the seat Pastor Green had vacated. A delivery from Pastor Green, Emma explained, recounting the pastor's visit while Lily shed her wet jacket and ordered a coffee. Lily examined the photographs, her expression hardening as she took in the evidence of their family's disturbing legacy. So grandfather was the one who started it all. Found some ancient ritual, thought he could use it to build his church, control people through fear, and Dad continued it, Emma added, though it sounds like he might not have fully understood what he was dealing with until it was too late. Lily's eyes fixed on their mother's letter. Have you opened it? Emma shook her head. I was waiting for you. They sat in silence for a moment. The background noise of the cafe, the hiss of the espresso machine, murmured conversations. Music playing softly overhead, creating a strange, normal counterpoint to the weight of what lay before them. Together? Lily finally said, echoing their words from the basement. Emma nodded, carefully breaking the seal on the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, covered on both sides with their mother's elegant handwriting. My dearest Emma and Lily, if you're reading this, then I am gone, and you have finally discovered the truth about our family. I've tried many times to take you away from this place, this legacy, but the roots your grandfather planted run too deep in this community. What began as one man's hunger for power has become something far more dangerous. Your grandfather discovered an ancient text during the renovation of the old church in 1948. The book contained rituals for contacting entities that exist in the spaces between our world and others, beings that feed on fear and devotion in equal measure. He believed he could control these forces, use them to build a congregation unlike any other, one where faith was not just believed but experienced. And for a time it worked. People came from miles around to witness the miracles of the Church of Divine Revelation. But such power demands payment. The entities required blood sacrifices, animals at first, but their hunger grew. Your grandfather would never admit what happened to certain congregation members who suddenly moved away in those early years. When your father came of age, he was initiated into these rituals. He truly believed in their righteousness, believed that frightening people into devotion was saving their souls. By the time I met and married him, he had already taken over much of his father's work. I didn't know the truth until after Emma was born. I witnessed a ritual I was never meant to see, and from that moment, my only thought has been how to protect you both from this legacy. I've tried everything, running away, contacting authorities, even attempting to destroy the book itself. Nothing has worked. They always find us, always bring us back. Her father is not entirely to blame. He was raised in this, shaped by it from childhood, but he has made his choices, and now I must make mine. What your grandfather began requires a bloodline to sustain it. 3 generations, the founder, the inheritor, and the completion. You, my precious daughters, are meant to be that completion, the 3rd generation that would fully manifest these entities into our world. I cannot allow that to happen. There is another ritual, one I found hidden in your grandfather's papers, a way to break the covenant, but at great cost. The willing sacrifice of one bound by blood to the original summoner can create a temporary disruption in the connection. It won't end things permanently, only the 3rd generation can do that, but it will buy you time. Time to grow strong, to get away from here, to eventually make your own choice about whether to continue or end this legacy. By the time you read this, I will have completed this counter-ritual. Know that I did not leave you out of despair or selfishness, but out of desperate love. My final act will weaken the entity's connection to our family for years, long enough, I hope, for you both to escape this place, when the time comes, and it will come. For these forces are patient and persistent. You must decide together whether to continue or end what your grandfather started. The choice must be unanimous. The bloodline must either fully embrace or fully reject the covenant. I believe in your strength, your wisdom, your love for each other. Whatever you decide, do it together. That is the only way. I love you both beyond words, beyond life itself. Always and forever. Your mother, Elizabeth Riley, Emma, and Lily sat in silence for a long time after reading the letter, tears streaming down both their faces. Outside, the rain had slowed to a gentle patter, the late afternoon sun breaking through the clouds to cast golden light across wet streets. She sacrificed herself for us, Lily finally said, her voice barely audible, to give us time to get away. And it worked, Emma added. For 10 years we were free of it. Until Dad died and the protection began to fade. Lily wiped her eyes. We finished what she started. We chose to end it. Emma nodded, carefully folding the letter and returning it to the envelope. The bloodline ends with us. They sat together in the coffee shop as evening fell, talking quietly about their mother's courage, about the lives they had built for themselves far from Blackwater County, about the future that was now truly their own to shape. As they finally prepared to leave, Lily asked, "What do we do with all this?" She gestured to the portfolio of evidence. Emma considered for a moment. "We burn it, all of it except Mom's letter. The world doesn't need to know about the Book of Names or what it nearly unleashed that night." In the small metal trash can behind their hotel, the sisters burned the photographs and documents, watching as the flames consumed the last physical evidence of their family's dark legacy. The ashes swirled upward, carried away by the night breeze, scattering into nothingness. 3 days later, they stood together at the local cemetery, placing flowers on their mother's grave for the first time in 25 years. The simple headstone bore only her name and dates, with no mention of her being a beloved wife or mother, their father's final act of erasure. "We should change this," Lily said, touching the cold stone. "Add something about her courage, her love." Emma nodded. "Something that tells the truth about who she really was." As they turned to leave, a sense of peace settled over them both, not the false peace of ignorance, but the hard-won tranquility that comes from facing darkness and emerging on the other side, scarred but whole. The Riley family legacy of fear, control, and ancient horrors had ended. What remained was something their grandfather and father had never understood: the quiet, enduring power of love, a mother's sacrifice, 2 sisters' unbreakable bond, and the choice to end a cycle of darkness rather than perpetuate it. Together, Emma and Lily walked out of the cemetery into the bright September day, leaving behind the weight of generations and stepping fully into lives that were, at last, entirely their own.